In the heart of the galaxy, there was one truth that many alien races quietly agreed upon. Humans were too much, too emotional, too loud, too curious, too close. The Varelian people, in particular, feared human intimacy. To them, emotional closeness was dangerous. It was something that could disrupt their empathic balance and weaken their mental focus. Even light physical contact like a handshake or a smile held meanings that Varelians had no words for. Their society valued calm distance, respectful silence, and harmony of thought. They believed emotional restraint was a sign of wisdom, so when the Varelian Council chose young Salary Ven to serve as an honorary assistant in a human diplomat's house on Terra Prime, the decision shocked many. "Why me?" she had asked, her voice calm but tight. "Because you have always asked why," Salary the Elder had replied. "You are curious. And brave." She didn't feel brave, not as she stood in the transport station on Terra Prime, watching humans laugh loudly, slap each other on the back, or lean in close to talk. It was like walking through fire. Her own people would never behave like this in public. The diplomatic building was sleek and modern, with wide glass walls and soft lighting. A human greeted her with a cheerful nod and pointed toward a quiet corridor. "You're assigned to Commander Elias Reese. He's expecting you." The name was known even on her world. Elias Reese, a human commander turned diplomat, had fought in the Outer Rim Wars. His name carried respect, but also mystery. Some said he was dangerous, others said he was kind. But one thing was clear, he was entirely human. That as she entered the quarters, she expected music or bright colors or the smell of strong spices, but the place was calm. Warm, yes, but not wild. Books lined one wall, and a small garden of native earth plants rested by the window. And then she saw him. Elias Reese stood near the window, looking out over the city. His hair was dark and short, his posture relaxed. He wore simple clothes, not a military uniform. When he turned, his eyes met hers, but instead of sharp curiosity or judgment, there was only a quiet welcome. "You must be Salari," he said, with a small smile. "I'm Elias. I hope the journey wasn't too hard on you." His voice was steady and gentle, not loud, not overwhelming. She bowed slightly. "It was acceptable, Commander." "Just Elias is fine," he said, stepping aside. "I'm not your superior. I think of this as a cultural exchange, not a command." She was confused. "You don't want me to follow orders?" He chuckled softly. "Not unless you want to. Would you like tea?" "Tea," she echoed. He motioned to a small machine. "On the counter we have some earth blends. Or I could try to make something similar to Varelian sky herb tea. I read about it. It's made with dried blue petals," and her eyes widened. "How do you know about that? You mentioned it once in your file. I thought you might enjoy something familiar." He pressed a button and a soft hum began. "It may not be perfect, but I did my best." Salari didn't respond right away. This was unusual. No one, not even her own kind, paid attention to such small details about her. Humans were supposed to be careless, quick to talk and slow to listen, but here he was, remembering something she barely remembered sharing. She sat at the edge of the chair, stiff and unsure. He placed the cup near her, but did not sit too close. In fact, he kept a respectful distance. "I was told," she began slowly, "that humans are emotionally intense." He raised an eyebrow, guilty as charged. "That your kind doesn't understand personal space." He gave a small smile. "Some of us don't. I try. And that you form deep attachments, quickly, too quickly." He nodded. "We're built that way, but I've learned to move slower when needed." She stared at the steam rising from the tea. "My people fear your kind because of this." "I know," he said softly. "But I'm glad you're here anyway." The room was quiet for a moment. The city lights blinked outside like stars had fallen to the ground. "You will have full access to the space," Elias said after a pause. "I have no secrets here. If anything makes you uncomfortable, just tell me. You don't have to change who you are." Salari looked up, surprised. "You mean that?" "Yes." He nodded. "It's not just about learning your ways. I want to make sure you feel safe here." No human had ever said that to her before. Over the next few days, Salari began her work. It was mostly symbolic, checking schedules, organizing communications, and observing human routines. Elias never treated her like a servant. He greeted her every morning, asked about her sleep, and sometimes told her about his past, his home on Earth, and even the books he liked to read. He never asked for anything in return. One morning, while checking the pantry inventory, she found a new box of tea, Varelian blue sky petals, real ones. She picked up the box with shaking hands. These were rare, hard to grow outside her world. Impossible to buy without permission from the council. How had he gotten them? Later that evening, she asked him. Elias looked up from his tablet and smiled. I made a request through a mutual contact. It took a few favors. But why? She asked, genuinely puzzled. Because you mentioned you missed the scent, he said simply. And I figured maybe having a little piece of home might help. She stared at him. She had no words. It wasn't just tea, it was the idea behind it, the effort, the quiet care. He had listened, and remembered, and acted. Humans will break you without touching you, the elders had said. And yet, as she stood there with the box of tea in her hand and Elias looking at her with nothing but calm respect, she felt something she had not expected. Not fear, not discomfort, but warmth. Deep, unfamiliar warmth. Sailor Yvonne kept a log. It wasn't required. No one told her to do it. But each night, when the lights of Terra Prime dimmed and the city below fell into a quiet glow, she sat by the window in her quarters and recorded her thoughts. Entry 17. Humans are strange. They say more with silence than some species say with words. Elias Reese continues to offer small gestures of respect. I do not know what to make of it. It is not manipulation, but it is unfamiliar. She paused her log and looked at the steaming cup of blue sky tea beside her. It still amazed her how he had found it. Her own kind would have called such effort unnecessary, wasteful even. But humans believed in connection. That was becoming clearer every day. The next morning she walked into the shared workroom to find Elias bent over a small machine on the table. What is that? She asked. He smiled without looking up. A cleaner drone. Yours has been acting slow lately, right? I figured I could help upgrade the motor. You noticed? She asked, surprised. Of course, he said. You muttered something about its delay last week. I did not realize I said that out loud. You did, he said with a grin. And I pay attention. Sailari didn't know how to respond, so she said nothing and watched as he adjusted a tool with practiced ease. His hands moved with care, not like a warrior, but like someone who had learned patience the hard way. After a while, she spoke again. Why do you listen so much, Elias? He paused, looked up, and tilted his head. Because most people only talk. Listening helps me understand, and when I understand someone, I know how to treat them right. She stared at him for a long moment. That was not a concept her people practiced. Varelians believed that understanding came from shared thought, not listening. Their empathic abilities let them feel what others felt, but it was controlled, filtered. Deep emotion, especially human emotion, could overload that system, and that's why their elders feared it. But here, with Elias, there was no chaos, just gentle attention, quiet presence. Later that day, Solari accompanied him to a diplomatic meeting. It was a simple matter trade, discussions with a few smaller species, but as they entered the chamber, one of the representatives, a tall, horned being from the Jakari sector, looked at her and whispered something in his native tongue. Silari heard it, pet or decoration. Before she could react, Elias spoke. His voice was calm but sharp. She is my colleague and a respected guest of Terra Prime. You will speak of her with proper dignity or not at all. The chamber fell silent. The Jakari representative blinked and looked away. Silari said nothing during the rest of the meeting. She didn't trust her voice, but something shifted inside her. Elias didn't defend her out of duty. He did it because he meant it. That evening, Elias found her in the garden room, quietly trimming one of the alien plants they had brought from her homeworld. He didn't say anything at first, just stood near the doorway, watching her work. Finally, he asked, "You all right?" She didn't look at him. "You spoke for me today." "Yes, I could have defended myself." "I know," he said, "but I wanted him to know he crossed a line." She turned. "Why does that matter to you? I am not your family, not your friend. I am just a guest." Elias crossed the room and sat on the bench nearby, keeping a respectful distance. "You're more than a guest. You're Silari, a person I respect, a voice worth hearing." She stared at him. "My people say human closeness is dangerous, that you become too attached, too fast, that your kind cannot separate feeling from duty." He chuckled softly. "They're not wrong. We do feel things quickly, deeply, sometimes messily, and yet," she said slowly, "it does not feel dangerous. Not with you." Elias looked at her carefully, his expression soft. "I try to be careful. You matter, that's all." That night her log was different. Entry 21. Today, a Jakari insulted me in a council chamber. Elias defended me without hesitation. He did not do it to impress me. He did it because he believed I deserved respect. I begin to understand now human intimacy is not weakness, it is commitment, a choice to care, even when it is not required. Over the next week, something quiet grew between them. They shared stories, simple ones. Elias told her about his family farm back on Earth, about how his wife used to laugh at his poor cooking, about how he once tried to grow alien plants and accidentally fed them too much salt. Salary shared her memories, too, of the floating gardens on her homeworld, of singing stones and the festivals of silence. She even told him about her childhood pet, something Varelians rarely spoke about. As pets were considered deeply personal, they never touched, not once, but the closeness between them deepened with every story, every pause, every shared moment. One morning, while cleaning the study, Salary noticed a framed photo tucked into a corner of the desk. It showed Elias and a smiling woman with bright eyes. They stood on a cliff near a blue ocean, wind in their hair. She didn't touch it, but she stared at it for a long time. That evening, while reviewing data files together, she asked carefully, "Is that your mate?" Elias didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. Her name was Mira. She is gone. Yes, a few years now. I am sorry, she said gently. He looked down at his hands. You're the first person I've spoken to about her in a long time. Why? She asked. Because most people don't listen, or they try to fix what can't be fixed. He gave a small smile. But you just asked. That's all. She didn't press him, didn't offer comforting words. She only nodded and stayed. Later that night, he passed by her door and said softly, "Thanks for listening," and walked away. As she sat by her window, tea in hand, Salari tried to understand what had just happened. He had shared pain, not because she demanded it, not because he was weak, but because he trusted her. Not even her own kind had trusted her like that before. She opened her log and began to write. Entry 27. Elias Reese spoke of his past today, of someone he loved and lost. He did not seek pity. He did not ask for comfort. He only wished to be heard. I listened, and in that moment I felt something I do not have a word for. We have always feared human closeness, but perhaps what we truly fear is the strength it requires to open one's heart without asking for anything in return. It was raining on Terra Prime. Most humans disliked the rain, but Elias Reese stood by the window with a cup of hot coffee in his hand, watching the droplets slide down the glass. His thoughts were somewhere far away. Behind him, Salari entered the room quietly. She was careful not to disturb the stillness, but Elias turned at the soft sound of her footsteps and gave her a small nod. "You're up early," he said. "I could not sleep," she replied. He tilted his head. "Bad dreams," she hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. "I dreamed of home, of the floating gardens, but in the dream they were empty. No voices, no light." Elias placed his cup on the table. "Sounds like loneliness." She blinked at. Did not feel lonely, only disconnected. He walked over and sat down on the couch, motioning for her to join him. She did, keeping a respectful space between them, as always. "Dreams can mean many things," he said. "Sometimes they tell us things we haven't admitted to ourselves." Salari looked out the window, then whispered, "I do not miss my people's rules, but I miss the quiet order, the certainty." Elias nodded. "Change is uncomfortable, even good change." She studied him for a long moment. "You speak of change as if you've lived through it many times," he chuckled. "I have war, peace, marriage, loss. Every one of those moments broke something in me, and every time, I had to grow in a new direction. You speak of loss without bitterness, because bitterness only grows if I feed it," he replied. "Mira wouldn't want me to live that way." She lowered her eyes. "You still carry her memory." "Of course," he said gently, "but that doesn't stop me from caring about what's in front of me." He didn't say it with force or expectation, just truth. Salari's chest tightened with something she didn't understand. Not pain, not fear, but feeling. It was starting to happen more often in the days that followed. Salari found herself noticing more. She noticed the way Elias always kept an extra cup ready when making tea, even if she hadn't asked for one. She noticed how he adjusted the lighting in the room slightly when she entered, softer for her comfort. She noticed that he never interrupted her thoughts, but always waited patiently until she was ready to speak. Her people had taught her that emotions must be controlled, but Elias didn't control his feelings, he guided them, and somehow, that was more powerful. One evening, she stood by the small indoor garden they had built together. The alien flowers were growing well, especially the silver-leafed myral bloom from her homeworld. She reached out and gently touched one of the petals. Elias entered the room, holding a datapad. I found a new light setting that might help the blooms open faster, he said. Would you like to try it? She turned slowly and looked at him. There was something on her face, a question she had not dared ask before. Elias, she said softly, why are you so patient with me? He blinked, surprised. What do you mean? I am not easy to understand. I do not act like your people. I do not laugh. I do not speak quickly. I am distant. He stepped forward a little, not too close. Say, Laurie, you are thoughtful, kind, stronger than you think. That's not distance. That's grace. She looked away. My elders warned me that humans form attachments too quickly. He smiled. They're probably right. I do feel close to you, but I've never forced that closeness on you, have I? No, she whispered. Then maybe, he said gently, you can stop being afraid of it. Later that night, Salary sat in her room, holding her log tablet, but she didn't write in it. Not yet. Her mind was too full. She thought of the way Elias smiled when talking about the stars, the way he always asked if she had eaten, the way he remembered her favorite kind of tea without being told twice. These were not actions of duty, they were signs of something else, something deep and human. A few days later, a message arrived from the Varelian Council. It was a routine check-in, but at the end of the message, the elder speaker asked a question. Have you remained separate from their ways, Salari? Have you remembered who we are? She stared at the words for a long time. That evening, while walking through the hallway, Elias noticed her silence. You all right? He asked. I received a message, she said quietly. From my people. He didn't press, just waited. They asked if I'm still Varelian, if I've stayed separate. She paused. But I don't feel separate anymore. Elias nodded slowly. That's okay. You're not betraying who you are by learning something new. I am afraid they will not see it that way. He looked at her gently. Do you see it that way? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at him, really looked at the tired strength in his eyes, the calm in his voice, the unshakable warmth he offered without needing anything in return. No, she said finally. I do not. 2 days later, the incident happened. Salari and Elias were walking back from a small cultural exchange meeting when a minor tremor shook the upper platform of the city. It was nothing serious, just a quake caused by shifting engines in a docking station nearby. But Salari, unprepared, lost her balance. She stumbled near the edge of the walkway, and before she could react, Elias reached out and grabbed her hand. His skin touched hers, and in that moment something broke, not in pain, but like a door being opened. Her empathic senses exploded with sensation, not wild, not chaotic, but clear. She felt his worry, his fear for her safety, his relief when she didn't fall, and under it all, his deep, steady care for her. She gasped and stepped back, her hand shaking. Elias looked startled. Are you all right? She nodded slowly. Yes, just surprised. I'm sorry, I didn't think. No, she said, voice firm but calm. Do not apologize. She looked at her hand, then back at him. I expected human contact to be overwhelming, but it wasn't. What did you feel? He asked carefully. Took a deep breath. I felt you clearly, cruelly, and for the first time, I was not afraid of it. Elias smiled. Not a proud smile. Just soft, quiet. Then maybe, he said, you've found something stronger than fear. The gardens of Terra Prime were in full bloom. Every species that had contributed to the alliance had sent a living signal. Flowers, plants, trees, or glowing moss to grow together in one shared place. They called it the Unity Garden. Stood near the Varelian bloom, a silver-leafed flower that opened only during moonlight. She placed her hand gently near its stem. The plant responded to her warmth, unfolding slowly. It was beautiful, delicate, and completely still, just like her people. Or so she used to believe. Morning, Elias's voice came from behind her. She turned. He held 2 cups of tea. One was her favorite. She took it silently. Their eyes met. There was no need for words. They were past that now. Since the moment he had grabbed her hand on the walkway, something had changed between them, not just in how they saw each other, but in how she saw herself. Before she was a visitor, a student of human behavior. Now she was something else. A bridge. That afternoon, they sat in the observation room together, watching the clouds drift beneath the station. I keep thinking about your people, Elias said softly. Solari looked at him. What about them? They taught you to fear closeness. But what happens when you go back? Will they understand how much you've changed? She didn't answer at first. Then she said, they will not understand, at least not at first. My emotions now feel too open, my presence, too touched by yours. The council will think I've been influenced. But you have, Elias said gently. And so have I. She turned to face him. Then what does that mean for us? Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees, thinking carefully. It means we can't ignore what we've built here. I won't ask you to stay. That would be selfish, but I also won't pretend none of this happened. She nodded slowly. There was a long pause before she whispered, I don't want to go. His eyes widened slightly. You don't. I want to learn more, not just about your people, about us, about what it means to feel without fear. For a long time neither of them said a word. Outside, a soft rain began to fall again. The next day a message came from the Varelian Council. It was brief, a direct order. Return home for realignment and debriefing. She read the message twice, then a third time. Her chest felt tight. Realignment was not a punishment, but it was a quiet correction, a way to reset one's emotional boundaries, to return Varelians to their natural, calm state. She brought the message to Elias. His face stayed calm, but his hands clenched slightly. What will you do? I do not know. You could say no. She shook her head, defying the council. Could cause problems between our people. I am not ready for that. He looked down. But are you ready to forget all of this? She didn't answer that evening. Elias showed her something unexpected. They walked to a quiet dome at the far end of the station, rarely used anymore. Inside was a small holographic projector. I found a memory from Mira, he said. Something I haven't looked at in years. He activated the projection. A woman appeared tall, smiling, her voice soft and cheerful. Eli, she said in the recording, if you're watching this, it means you're still carrying too much. Stop blaming yourself. Open your heart again, even if it hurts. That's how you keep going. That's how we love. The recording ended. Scifi stood still, uncertain what to say. Elias took a breath. She knew I'd struggle. She left that for me, and somehow, I think she'd understand you. She'd like you. Scifi touched her chest gently, where her inner pulse had grown fast. Your bond with her is still alive. He smiled in memory. But now I have something new to protect. She turned to him. Elias, if I return home, if they force realignment, I may forget all of this, not the knowledge, but the feeling. He stepped closer. Then don't let them take that from you. But I am only one voice, she whispered. Elias held her gaze. Sometimes one voice is all it takes. That night, Scifi wrote in her log one final time, entry 42. The council has summoned me. I fear they will erase what I have become, but I also know now that I cannot return unchanged. Elias has not taken my identity, he has expanded it. I am still Varelian, but I am also more. Perhaps that is not weakness, but evolution. The next morning, she prepared for departure. Her shuttle was scheduled to leave at sunrise. Elias walked her to the bay. They said little, but just before she stepped into the shuttle, he handed her something smaller, sealed container. She opened it. Inside was a tiny clipping of the moth. Bloom, I thought it might remind you, he said quietly. She looked up. Of what? He smiled. Of who you are now. The shuttle door closed. Scifi sat in silence as the stars moved around her. She held the flower close. Her decision was not made yet, but her heart had already chosen. 1 week passed. Then 2. Elias returned to his normal work, though it didn't feel normal anymore. He missed her quiet voice, her curious questions, the way she stood near him without speaking, and still made him feel understood. Then, just as the sun was rising on the 15th day, a transmission arrived, not from the Varelian Council, but from Scifi. Her face appeared on the holoscreen. Calm and clear. I have made my choice, she said. I refused realignment. I told them the truth. That I carry your influence now, and that I do not wish to let it go. Elias leaned forward, breath catching. There were arguments, she continued, but in the end, they agreed. I am allowed to return, as a representative, not just of my people, but of the new path we are exploring. She paused, eyes soft. If you will still have me, I would like to continue what we started. Elias smiled full and bright. Always, he whispered. The morning she returned, the sky above Terra Prime was bright and clear. Elias stood by the docking platform, dressed simply in his usual dark jacket and boots, but his heart was anything but calm. He kept looking toward the sky, watching for the small Varelian shuttle that was supposed to arrive. Then, at last he saw it. The sleek silver vessel descended slowly, quiet and graceful, like the movement of a falling leaf. It landed without sound. Elias waited, holding his breath. The door opened, and Scifi stepped out. She wore her traditional white and silver Varelian robe, but something about her was different. She held herself taller now, not cold or distant, but strong. Her eyes found Elias immediately. They didn't speak at first. Then Elias smiled. You came back, Sailari gave a soft nod. I said I would. You kept your word. I kept more than that, she said quietly. I kept myself. He stepped forward. Was it hard? Yes, she said honestly. But I am not afraid anymore. They stood in silence, just looking at each other. For both of them, this was not the end of something. It was a beginning. Over the following weeks, changes began across Terra Prime and not just in Elias and Solari's world. Solari had returned with a new title, Cultural Bridge Envoy. The first of her kind. The Varelian Council had agreed, cautiously, to test a new system of mutual exchange. Varelians would no longer observe humanity from afar. They would learn by living alongside them. Solari became the first to do so openly. Elias supported her every step of the way. They worked together to write a joint study called Living Empathy, Human and Varelian Emotional Exchange. It was simple, respectful, and honest, just like them. Their work began drawing attention from other species too. Ambassadors came to visit. Students sent messages. People were listening, but the real change happened in small moments. One afternoon, Elias walked into the greenhouse and found Solari tending the plants. The myral bloom was taller now, spreading soft silver light across the leaves. You've made it grow faster, he said, impressed. It responds to emotion, she said softly. When it senses peace, it blooms sooner. Elias chuckled. Oh, this place must be full of peace lately. Solari looked at him, not just peace, balance. He tilted his head. What do you mean? She placed her hands gently on the soil. Before, I believed emotions must be hidden to keep peace. But you showed me a different way. You showed me that feelings do not have to control us. But we should not run from them either. Elias smiled. You found your own answer. No, she said softly. We found it. Time passed. One evening, as the two walked near the Unity Garden, they saw a group of Varelian children with human tutors, sharing stories and drawing pictures in the grass. Solari paused to watch. The children were laughing together, open, unafraid. Elias looked at her. Do you see that? She nodded. That would never have happened before. You did that. No, she said. We did that. He smiled. You say that a lot now, because it's true. They sat on a bench nearby, watching the sun sink low in the sky. Do you ever miss your home? Elias asked gently. Yes, Solari admitted. But not in the way I once did. Before, I missed the silence, the control. Now I miss the scent of the air, the feel of the stone paths beneath my feet. But I do not miss hiding who I am. He reached out his hand. She didn't hesitate. She took it. It was the second time she had allowed contact. This time, it didn't shock her. It felt right, warm, grounding. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at him. I once feared this, she said softly. Now I think it's what makes us strong. Elias nodded. Connection makes everything stronger. Later that night, Elias sat by his desk, writing. He opened a blank journal. One he hadn't used in years. At the top of the page, he wrote, the day Solari came back. Then he began writing, not about science or war, not about peace treaties or political change, but about moments like when Solari had stood silently in the doorway just to make sure he was okay, or when she had stayed up late fixing the small cracks in the greenhouse dome so the wind wouldn't disturb the new seedlings, or how she had begun humming soft tunes from her world, even if she thought no one was listening. Elias wrote about love, but not the fast kind, the slow kind, the kind that grows over time, patient and steady, the kind that changes the world without making a sound. Some months later, Solari was invited to speak at the Interstellar Harmony Conference. It was the largest diplomatic event in the sector. She stepped onto the platform, her heart calm. Behind her stood Elias, silent but present. She addressed the crowd in simple words. There was a time when I feared humans, not because of what they were, but because of how they felt. I believed their emotions would destroy my balance. I believed their closeness was dangerous, but I was wrong. I have learned that human closeness is not weakness, it is trust. I have learned that to connect does not mean to lose oneself. It means to share. I am still Varelian, but I am also a friend, a partner, a learner. And that is more than I ever expected to become. The audience gave quiet applause, respectful, meaningful. Elias smiled. Solari looked at him, and for the first time in public, she gently placed her hand over his. No one said anything. They didn't need to. Back at their home on Terra Prime, a new plant had begun to grow in the greenhouse. It was a cross between Varelian bloom and a hardy earth vine. No one had seen it before. They called it the Rosari Vina, symbol of something beautiful, born from two worlds that once feared each other. Now they thrived together. just like Elias and Salary, the end.